everybody. How's everyone doing today? So we got people waiting in the chat already here, people who've already left a few comments. Let me just get myself straight here. Let me know if you hear everything all right, if the volume is good. Oh, I should turn this off. That's... there we go. Hopefully that does it. Okay, so we got a few people already here. Nice to see everybody. Thanks a lot for stopping by. I wanted to share a nice little comment. Crows and Ravens already popped in. Oh, I can't find the original comment. It must have been taken down or something. But anyway, Crows and Ravens had come by. Just my response is still on here, and she, I don't know if it's a he or she, was just saying, you know, maybe I'll pop in. Nice to see you. Ask me anything. She was like, well, okay, where do you get all your shirts from? So that explains why I've got a little comment there saying, hi, Crows and Ravens. Just saw this now, and I see you again. I generally buy them from Tip Top and other random places, but yeah, Tip Top always runs great sales and good quality. Every now and then I go to the Bay. Yeah, thanks for the compliment, and I do like wearing nicer shirts, but I'm also looking for a deal wherever I can. So we also got Jay Wallaby 789. He's not going to be able to make it today, which I totally understand. Very busy, whatever, but hopefully we'll catch you next time, and thanks for saying hi. In the meantime, I'll just keep this going here and check in on it periodically. Feel free to leave any questions that you may have, or just to make any comments if there's anything that you agree with, and certainly if there's anything you disagree with, you can just enter it in the comment section, and I'll be happy to engage with you guys on that. I did get some questions last time. This was in the lead up to my last live stream, and there were some questions that I didn't get around to answering because I just we got carried away on other things. So I thought that I would start off here with this one question. What are the best methods of convincing your Jehovah's Witness friends and families they're in a cult? What are the best methods to convince them that they're in a cult? Well, you know, I was thinking about this as I was about to come on live stream here, and I was thinking of one particular story, and it's going to take me a minute to kind of lay it out. But have you ever heard of the anecdote of the smart aleck boy? No, the wise man and the smart aleck boy. So the smart aleck boy, he's always trying to trip up this old man. Let's say it's his father or it's his grandfather, you know. And he's a rebel, right? And he's like, well, how can I make him look really stupid? So he goes out into the woods and he finds this little chickadee, sparrow, or whatever, just a tiny bird. And he picks it up, and it's just this defenseless little thing. And he says, I'm going to take this, I'm going to cover it, I'm going to go up to him and ask, there's a bird in my hand. Is it alive or is it dead? If the wise old man says it's alive or it's dead, I'll just let the thing go and say, see, there was no bird in my hand after all, you foolish old man. And if he says that the bird is alive, the boy would crush the bird until all the life was sucked out of it. And then he would open the hands and be like, see, you foolish old man, the bird is dead. And so he's like, okay, so he goes up to the old man and he plays this out. He asks the old man, I have a bird in my hand. Is it alive or is it dead? And the old man grabs the kid's hand, the smart aleck boy's hand, and says, the bird is in your hands, my son. The bird is in your hands. And that to me is a very poignant illustration of what's going on in JW dynamics a lot of the time when you've got someone who's left and you've got someone who's still in. We're both set on convincing each other. Now, I haven't fully drawn the comparison yet. I'm going to get to it in a minute, but I want to tell another story which kind of drives my point home even further, and I'll kind of tell you why these stories have such a profound impact on me. I remember when I was pioneering, and I was in the deaf group at the time, and there was this cheeky elder that I like to this day. I actually still have a lot of respect for him, and he had a way of putting people on the spot, but he was very clever, and he was friendly about it. You didn't feel like you were suckered into anything, you know. Anyway, I was pioneering, and we went up to this one door. I barely had a grasp on the language. I was barely fluent. I'm not fluent at all anymore. I haven't kept up my sign language. And what was so neat is he immediately, when the householder was asking questions, he immediately, John was his name, he switches positions, so now he's facing me, and he's kind of shoulder to shoulder with the householder, and he's peppering me with questions. And so he's taking, you know, the optics of the whole thing is he's taking sides with the householder and putting me on the spot and seeing if I can defend what I'm saying, you know. And the guy was, like, the householder was already somewhat adversarial, you know, and asking serious questions. But it changed the dynamic because the householder began to befriend John. And of course, John, you know, he didn't throw me under the bus or anything like that. He would just, you know, it would just change the dynamic of the whole thing. And it was like, this now became a community building enterprise. It wasn't us coming to the door to convince this man to our position, even though that is ultimately what we were trying to do, isn't it? Now, these two stories that I tell have had a profound impact on me because, first of all, with the wise old man and the smart aleck boy, something that we have to understand about arguments that arise in these situations is, not all the time, but most of the time, arguments are not about arriving at truth or fact in the matter. Arguments are about control. And the original question here, what are the best methods of convincing your JW friends and family that they're in a cult? Well, the best method is to abandon that goal, to convince anyone. And it's weird. It's one of those weird contradictions that when you give up control, you gain it, right? It's actually a Taoist and a Zen preachment. You know, you can't lead people, you can't persuade people to your position when you are, when they feel that you are lording it over them, when they feel that you're in a position of authority. The best forms of authority, and now leadership is an actual science in academia. What they're finding is that leadership consists of community building, really. You know, it's different in more volatile parts of the world, dictatorships and so on, where you have people that, you know, it's all about brute strength. But as we know, the brute strength really does ultimately come from civilization and from the populace. And so those sort of dictatorships are very volatile. It may seem like, you know, Kim Jong-un will be the leader forevermore. But when you take the grand historical view, that form of leadership is very temporary. And so, speaking about convincing Jehovah's Witnesses, you need, my most direct answer is you need to abandon that entire pursuit in order to be the most persuasive with them. You have to find a way to have a community building gestalt with them. You want to get away entirely from the idea that we're going to change each other's minds. And very often that's when you begin to persuade people. Now, it is different when you go into public debates, you know, because you're trying to convince the crowd. You're not trying to convince the other person who's commissioned to take up a certain cause. In fact, the chances are even way less likely that you're going to convince him than anybody else, in personal disputes. You're trying to convince the crowd. So the public debates are about rhetoric. They're not about the fact at hand. But you can engage in a community building enterprise with witnesses. It might be slow, but it can be done, and you might never convince them completely on certain things, but you can at least have dialogue with them, and you can have the most amount of effect on them. We've got a comment here. Buzzkillington. Hi, Buzzkillington. I don't think I've seen you on here before, so welcome to the channel. A feature of all cults is that they vehemently deny that they are a cult. Please share other features that identify JWs as a cult. So, yeah, and that does kind of lead into what I was talking about, that, a person in a cult will never acknowledge that they're in a cult, right? I mean, the most resounding examples, like the Jim Jones massacre, or the Jonestown massacre. It was really only until the doors were shut and the Kool-Aid was poured that people started to realize, oh shit, something has gone askew here, But I mean, they followed the man into South America, for heaven's sakes. This was these were committed people, and it was too late at that point. So I would say, first of all, what do you think are features of a cult? I would say, well, this is where we can kind of get into kind of soppy terrain. I think that everything can technically qualify as a cult. I mean, we even apply that to films and books that have a cult following, or I'm in the Apple cult. I love Apple. My entire ecosystem is Apple. So I mean, I'm technically in a cult of sorts, aren't I? Right? But when people use the word cult, they're generally thinking of a really dangerous, harmful cult. A deadly cult like Jim Jones. Excuse me, Marshall Applewhite, Dave Koresh, so on and so forth. And you have a very strong element of pressure, not just from the top, but also from the bottom up. And I would say that definitely applies among most witnesses. Of course, you'll always find examples of people that you can have dialogue with, but the general consensus out there for those who've left the witnesses is that there's no freedom of thought. Any kind of heresy is immediately quashed. Yeah, I was actually watching a very interesting TikTok lately, where it was something like the girl asked, what was it? How did it go? Something like, what is the one thing that religious cults or groups really endorse until you're on the other side? And she said boldness. And how true is that? They want you to be, you're their best friend if you can be a bold witness, if you can boldly defend your views if you belong to a certain group. But the moment you turn that boldness and you become a bold critic, there is no space for that. Whereas when you go to more democratic institutions, we certainly have strong men all the same, and there's there's conflict and so on. But we all kind of underneath it all, we know that that's the system, and we allow a space for it. Unless we're talking about extreme things like Holocaust denial or things that are really damaging and incite violence. But generally, in a democratic system, it's different. We pride ourselves in the fact that there's conflict, and it's it's a system built on agonism, you know. So I endorse that completely. I I'm trying to think of other features that cults have. I mean, there's also the personality element that's very strong, and that is certainly coming more online with the governing body. For decades, they were this, you know, curmudgeonly, homophobic kind of cloistered group, but now they're out in front of the cameras all the time, and that's their main form of media. So yeah, it's you're getting more of a cult of personality, and these some of these faces are really a caricature. I mean, like Stephen Lett and Toni Morris and even Jeffrey Jackson, I would say they're really developing a cult of personality. I can't say that David Splain really has that yet, or some of the others, or Matt Anderson. From what I've seen, you know, those guys still seem, from what I can see anyway, they still seem somewhat, um, you know, well motivated. Of the Stephen Lett, Jeffrey Jackson, and Tony Anthony Morris types, I don't know. They seem corrupt to me, but that's just a personal judgment. I've got a few other people here. Nice to see everybody. Thanks for coming online. AC, hi there. Do you think you would ever join a religion under any circumstances? And then I got another one here, 1697 DJH. I used to think as the GB, like the Masters of the Jedi Temple. Yeah, that analogy is very apropos, I would say. It's exactly like that. So AC, to your question, do you think you'd ever join a religion? Oh, thank you so much for the super chat there, AC. That's very, very kind of you. I really appreciate that. You're awesome. Thanks for having this channel. Well, thanks for coming on. I really do appreciate it. Your super chats mean a lot to me, guys. It's, you know, it's we're not making tons of money on this thing, so it goes a long way. Thanks again. But to your question, AC, would I ever join a religion under any circumstances? So it's funny, I don't know, just before the pandemic, actually maybe about a year before the pandemic, I was going from faith to faith, you know, and there were a few communities that I don't know why I was doing it. I was an atheist. I still am an atheist. But for those of you who follow me, you know that I've never been really angry against religion in itself. You know, of course, I have many things that I object to about religious fundamentalism, and we'll probably talk about that a little later. But no, I'm quite friendly to most people who are in an organized religion, and especially people who are spiritual. You know, there was this Anglican church that I had been to just down the road from here. Actually, it's the oldest church in Victoria by happenstance, and there's a really nice guy there. He came up to me, welcomed me. He was one of the reverends, and we had a great chat. You know, I told him I'm an atheist. I'm not even really looking into becoming a Christian again. I came from Christianity. I've researched a lot, and I've just not been convinced. But you know, I do like seeing the community, how they engage with one another, and so I would go. And of course, I am kind of Petersonian in the idea that I do still appreciate biblical stories and some of the underlying positive morals that are underneath them, even though we're talking about backwards, benighted, you know, Bronze Age people. You know, there was these stories are powerful, right? And there's kind of this metaphoric substructure there that's really beautiful. So yeah, I would certainly go back to a church just to see how everyone relates to one another. I don't have any problem with that. In fact, I kind of enjoy it. I like seeing it, you know. I would not participate in any way. I don't think I wouldn't participate in the Eucharist, for example. It just that to me, I feel kind of silly doing that. And I don't know. I mean, as you know, I don't really believe in the risen Christ, you know. So it doesn't have any kind of power over me in that way. But yeah, I think religion can be a great thing, you know, beyond just spirituality. It offers community, and religious faith groups, they do tend to uh, build communities better than other communities. I'll just leave it at that, because that can get controversial. But I do think faith communities, they're a little more apt to cohesion, if that makes sense. Russell Uptake. Yes, I left when I was 30. When you are in, they will control. That's for sure. Awaken G. Hey, nice to see you again. Thanks for stopping by. Hey everyone. I never will because of CSA and feel it's all about money. Is that religion, all of it in particular, Awaken G? And yes, you had mentioned that before. I completely understand with child sexual abuse. Uh, you, you know, I can completely understand that. And there's actually, it does become a mental health thing that, if you can't bring yourself to go into these communities, or it brings up trauma or whatever, like, yeah, you probably shouldn't. But I'm just curious, Awaken G, are you talking about religion overall, or are you just talking about, going back to the Jehovah's Witnesses, if anything were to change there? Anyway, nice to see you guys. 1697, I want to come back to your point about, I used to think as the GB, like the masters of the Jedi Temple. That's so true, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying in the beginning about convincing your JW friends and family they're in a cult. We tend to think that there's magic powers of persuasion that we use, and certainly the governing body uses over people. And while there are certainly family dynamics that they exploit, and of course, on the flip side, there are also tools of persuasion that work. And rhetoric can be studying rhetoric can be a wonderful way of learning how to become more convincing. Those two are there really are no Jedi tricks at the bottom of it, even though we can be convinced of that. We see people who are so persuasive and charismatic, or we see how tight of a grip the governing body has on this group. And we think, like, what are they doing? How are they able to do that? And I would just say, you have to think about how many decades you've got people. This is intergenerational now. People growing up in this organization, and you have the culture to go along with it. And people can't see out of that sphere of influence, can they? Buzzkillington again. Does the JW anti-education doctrine equal anti-intellectualism? First of all, let's do one of these here. Good gin, by the way. First of all, I hope I answered your question earlier there, Buzzkillington, about cults. I definitely want to hear your thoughts if there's any other features I missed, because you'll probably jog my memory here. I think that's a great question. But your next question here, about anti-education equal intellectualism. I would say it does in a big way. Not always, though. As I've said in the past, like on evolution, they talk about evolution with a sweeping brush. Like, it's in academe, there's huge controversy about certain things. There's huge debates about microevolution and macroevolution, and does the neo-Darwinian view of reality hold up? And logical positivism is in there, and there are people on all sides of that position, even though they might say, well, yeah, we're evolutionists, or we're atheists. It's not as though academia is just evolutionists, and that's the end of it. In the fine print, when you get into the discussion of it, it's very broad, it's very nuanced, and there's some incredible thinkers that raise redoubtable objections within that community. And of course, there's still faith groups in philosophy, and especially that that do that, who there's this give and take. It's, and so when the witnesses look at the academic institution and they say, you go to university, you're going to become convinced of evolution. It's like, no, they're not. There's nothing that commits you to evolution if you get educated. And if there was certainly that tendency, you have to ask, is education the problem here? Maybe that bolsters the view of evolution, doesn't it? But anyway, there's many redoubtable objections to certain brands of evolution, I guess you could say. So their anti-intellectualism, their anti-education, certainly it does become anti-intellectual in a big way. I would say they're certainly anti-elitist in a big way. They're against bureaucrats, they're against governments, they're against the the too big to fail. They kind of like how often do they point to the Bible characters and say, they were unlettered and ordinary, and they throw out those scriptures that, do not be deceived by, philosophy and vain deceit. And, or when, when someone asked of Paul, great learning was it Paul who said it to someone else? Great learning has driven you mad, and to the writing of scrolls there's no end. So there are, they do use the scriptures to sound anti-intellectual and anti-education, but you kind of have to take a narrow focus on what in particular they're against education about. You know what I mean? It's just they're anti-education as long as that education contradicts what they're saying, which, as it turns out in recent years, is quite a bit. Okay, we got some more questions here. Oh, we got another super chat here. Thank you so much, Buzzkillington. It's great having you, and I really appreciate the super chats, guys. That's really kind of you. I think I skipped Awaken G here. It's not about God. It's the act of putting them in a position of trust. Yeah, and so like organized religion is that has the worst tendency towards that sort of dynamic, doesn't it? This sort of authority that isn't grounded in debate. It's not grounded in study and things like that. It's grounded in your position as a religious leader. So I completely understand that, and given the past that you just mentioned with CSA, I completely get that. It's not for everybody. I don't have much of a stomach for it myself. I would go occasionally, and I probably would go again, but I'm probably not too keen on joining an actual religion. I couldn't. I would be disingenuous. I don't believe in it, any mainstream religion. AC, I think I missed something here. I am just fine reading the Bible at home and praying. I would like to go to church on Christmas because it's a cozy feeling. Yeah, exactly. I completely understand that. And, lots of people have a very close connection with the Bible, and certainly when they're praying, I think that's very healthy. And we don't even know to what extent people interact with their Bibles, right? I mean, in the last live stream, we were talking about interpretation, how powerful that is, and how fluid it is. You don't know if when someone's reading the Bible, they're just taking something of a historical view or an anthropological view, or trying to understand the way ancient texts worked, or the culture back then. We don't know if they're just in it for the stories, such as what I mentioned earlier. There's still a lot of biblical stories I really like, and that I enjoy. I mean, certainly the Gospels. I mean, there's not a whole heck of a lot there to disagree with. It's just an affirmation of humanity. Sorry, that's my cat. If he goes to the litter, that sometimes I noticed in the last live stream he does that too. So anyway, but what do you think of that, AC? That's interesting. That like when you read the Bible, what are you gleaning from it? Is it the stories that get to you? You certainly don't sound like the kind of person that just sides on some of those Bronze Age principles that we've abandoned. You know what I mean? So Yeah, that's a really good point. Buzzkillington, okay, I answered that. Music Man 74, I haven't seen you before. It's great to see you here. Thanks a lot. Um, is it normal for an elder to invite someone to a judicial committee meeting? The person declines to come, no further calls, letters, nothing, nada. Okay, so a couple of things. My information is probably a little dated. Hang on here. Yeah, my information is probably a little dated, at least from what I understood up until, I don't know, 3, 4 years ago. The uh, modus operandi was that if it is legitimately a judicial committee, there's evidence that's been uh, brought forward about someone's behavior, and they're calling it a judicial committee. They've called you, they've said we need to set up a judicial committee, there's going to be 3 brothers there, uh, then that doesn't sound right to me, like the proper procedure where the person declines to come and then they don't give any further calls, no letters, nothing. They should give you some form of communique about what's happening. Um, it's if they've determined that you don't identify yourself as a witness in the community, that's a factor. But still, that question would come into play before they formed a judicial committee on the matter. Um, there are a lot of people that just fall through the cracks, So, I have heard that this does happen, but that does sound to me to deviate from the policies that were in place at least up until 3 or 4 years ago. I have heard of situations, what they will do sometimes, I've heard this very commonly actually, where, especially in cases of quote unquote apostasy, the person will say, I'm not participating in your little tribunal. And then they say, okay, well, then we'll have to disfellowship you. But there's still some communication there. They'll tell them over the phone unless you've hung up on them, or they will send you a letter or something to let you know that you're not part of this community anymore. So yeah, that does seem a little strange. Maybe give me some more details, Music Man 74, because that doesn't sound completely like they're following the rules there. Okay, we got some more comments here. Let me get caught up here. Yes, good answer to the cult question. Thank you very much. I hope you liked that. Hi, Awaken G and everyone. Oh, first of all, I wanted to go back. Music Man 74. Tell me what you think. What do you think that that's according to policies? Have you heard of anything that's updated in recent years? I'd really like to know, because I've been on the outs, a little while now. Awaken G, I would go to a wedding or a funeral, but to join a church, no way. Yeah, and I understand that, man. Like, that's, I get it. I do. AC, oh, bless him. Awaken G, hi, Buzz. I'm not going to be able to stay, but always enjoy Derek's content. Maybe next time. Thank you very much, Awaken G. That's nice. And hey, catch me another time if you got to go. I totally understand. It's just good that you popped in and said hello. And thank you for the compliment. Buzzkillington, did you hear? First of all, AC, thank you so much. You're so generous with all these super chats. This is nuts. Thank you so much. Buzzkillington, did you hear the Watchtower is only going to publish one new Watchtower per year? Someone posted a leaked elder letter. Oh my God. I thought I heard a whisper of this, but I didn't know we're going down that much. So tell me what you've heard, Buzzkillington. So it seems to me that they're doubling down on this televangelism, I guess. I mean, we all know that they've been putting a lot of money into building this media center, and I can only imagine their publications are not what they used to be. Like the print format just isn't circulating, especially after COVID. I mean, because our principal means of speaking to people, our principal means, I still say our, sorry, their principal means of speaking to people is, at the cart and going from door to door. And when that was kiboshed with COVID, they've really had to digitize this religion. So, yeah, that's interesting. Leave more details, because that sounds really interesting. They must be trying to get out of the print media altogether, I would think, hey? But I mean, Watchtower and Awake, that's been such a flagship for so long, and I mean, the thing keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. They really have only to stop printing altogether, for this to make sense. Okay, moving on. AC, sometimes reading the Bible puts me back in time, makes me imagine how things were, and that draws me closer to God. Yeah, and that's, so you have a historical view and a cultural view, and that's, we don't know when people are looking at their Bibles what they're getting out of it, right? I have many Bibles. Well, I've got the King James Version there. I've got all the New World translations, even one of the pocket Bibles. I think I've got a Living English translation around here somewhere. The Bible in Living English right there, yeah. So, yeah, and it's good to have that. And I often will look up a scripture if I think of something, and I'll go on, I think it's called Bible Hub, or no, Bible Gateway, and look at the different translations. And what I always find so fascinating is not only the differences in the translation. Yeah, the general idea is more or less universal. The wording is definitely different from one to the next when you get into the nitty gritty. If you're challenging things like the Trinity or other kind of basic doctrines, or the value of the Eucharist and things like that. But I would say what impresses me even more so than that is, I think it's on Bible Gateway, you'll have several verses, and then you scroll down further and you have several various interpretations from prominent theologians throughout the years, and how they've applied that scripture. And it's like, it's if you're looking for truth, biblical scriptural truth, it can be very frustrating because you're trying to get an answer. But I mean, I've abandoned that. I don't look to the Bible enough for that kind of authority. So it's, I find it so fascinating, just like I find, political disagreements among the Catholic Church. You've got the Catholic branch, and you've got the liberal branch, and there's even an LGBTQ branch in there now. In a very conservative religion, that just fascinates me. And so my whole point here is that interpretation is so broad, and you go to the Supreme Court, they interpret. You have originalists, you have intentionalists, that they fundamentally disagree on how to interpret the Constitution, and it makes big changes when it comes to questions of, should we allow abortion, should we allow marriage equality, and so on and so forth. So I just get such a kick out of that. Okay, so 1697 DJH, going kind of back to the policies surrounding disfellowshipping. I heard if you don't go to a judicial committee, they will DF you anyway, if that is their intention. Yeah, that does happen. As I mentioned, I have heard of that. They should be letting you know. As I say, I mean, if you hung up on them and they don't have your address or a voicemail or something like that, it's kind of like, well, how else are they going to tell you? Protecting the fold is going to be their biggest priority, right? But they should, at least as far as I know, the policies make it pretty clear that, the person needs to know that they're not a member any longer. You know what I mean? Where was I here? Robert Aluba. I've seen you a couple of times in here. It's nice to see you again. Maybe the elder tried to set up the Judicial Committee, and every elder he called was waking up. Yeah. You never know. I like that comment. 1697 DJH, is the model boat a Titanic replica? Yeah, I just built that. I just wanted something to fill that back area. Before, I had sort of this TV and these knickknacks here, but I just wanted something, I don't know, something to fill it up. And it took me, well, I never built these things in the past. Like when I was growing up, I never did puzzles like that, and it wasn't like intellectually hard. You just follow the instructions, but man, was it ever detailed. There's like thousands of little bits in there, so that was kind of neat. Um, Russell up, Russell Utakati. Hope I'm saying that properly. I think I've seen you here before too. Nice to see you. People are blind, can't see what JW is like. The sad thing is, my mom and my brother are among them. I know, man. It's a lot of us still have people on the end, and it's hard to know what to do. So what do you do? Are you able to have conversations with them? Like, and have you tried reasoning with them on certain things, or just having conversations with them on certain points? What's their reaction? That's interesting. Thanks for stopping by the way. AC, were you scared at all leaving the so-called truth with a throwing up emoji? Yeah, I was scared at first, but as I've said in other videos, uh, I've been, I was a little more cautious, I think, than a lot of people when I left. I didn't go burning any bridges, I mean, that's unavoidable to some extent, but I only locked horns with the people I had to, who are immediately meddling in my life and stuff. But overall, I still maintain relationships in the organization, and all of them, so far as I know, are aware that I have a channel and I talk about the witnesses. Now, granted, these people are marginal. They're not elders or anything like that. Although I have talked to elders, and they're not bad to me at all, because I don't get into anything with them, and I'm cordial, and yeah, so it's overall my relations are pretty good. I've probably been very fortunate though, so there is that, right? But yeah, I was really scared at the beginning. I just thought that it was this was either you're in or you're out, and if you're out, then you have no family. And I found over time that there is a way of leaving without rocking the boat too much. For some people, you have to leave and you have to make a statement and kind of go down the way what's his name, Martin Luther King did, but or sorry, and Martin Luther. Sometimes you have to stand on principle, but in my case, I just didn't see that was necessary. If people want to know my opinions, I have a forum where they can see that, and overall, it's just, I can talk to any witness, I can do business with them, I can, we can get on just fine. Texting love stories, thank you so much for the super chat. That's very nice. You guys are all very generous here. This is wonderful, and it's so nice to see some people on here that I haven't seen in a while, and some new ones of you too. Tell me your comments below, guys. If you've left recently or are thinking of leaving, are you scared? What's helping you through some of this trauma? I want to know about it. I want to hear your comments here, because it's as helpful to me as it is to everybody else. You know what I mean? 1697 DJH, well done. Thank you very much. Music Man 74, I served at Brooklyn Bethel, left, started waking up, created a YouTube channel, JW Nomo. The elders found out about my apostate videos and invited me to a Judicial Committee meeting, which I declined. Okay, so in your case, I don't know how much distance, how much of a interval there was between you serving at Bethel and opening up your channel. I would imagine just the fact that you were in Bethel, they probably did kind of have have you on the radar, that, even if you slipped out the back door, you know, you still had some position that you could exert some authority there, or persuade others to your view. So they might have thought it was important to just give you the axe. Uh, I'm still surprised if they haven't sent you details saying, you are no longer a witness. I would suppose if they're calling it out and out apostasy, which is a stupid word, but if they're calling it that, they might just spin it as saying, well, he knows what he is. He's not a witness. And it's like, well, split the difference, you know what I mean? Music Man 74, the elders never followed up. Yeah, that is strange. That doesn't sound right to me. It sounds like there was some departure in policy there. Hanitia, nice to see you. I haven't seen you before. Welcome to the channel. Where does the idea of judicial committees come from? It comes from Bronze Age nonsense. That's where it comes from. It's, I don't know when they started forming. I imagine judicial committees would have come online back when they instantiated the disfellowshipping policy, which I can't remember. It's like late 60s, early 70s or something, as I recall. I wasn't around then, so I don't know. But perhaps there were judicial committees or some kind of tribunal before that. I'm not aware. I mean, I know that there certainly were people that were public enemy to them. They would call them out. So yeah, I'm not really sure how the judicial committee as a thing came into existence, but that's interesting. Buzzkillington, good on you, Music Man 74. Never give others the authority to decide for you who you will associate with. Yeah, absolutely. I got to say something on that, guys. Non-participation is really, in a lot of cases, that is the best thing you can do. The witnesses don't have authority in your life, and the moment that you treat this entire thing as legitimate, the judicial committee, marking procedures, the moment that you go to the dollar store or the grocery store, people are like, oh, kind of timid around you, and you start feeding off of that and behaving like, oh, I'll respect the arrangement and all this. You're legitimizing it. Don't do that. You don't. Some people say, oh, I'm going to respect the arrangement. Like, you do you, but either you have a right to exist or you don't, and just go about your life, hold your head up high, and if they want to get into it and you think that you can have a constructive conversation with somebody, then go ahead. You can talk. We live in a democratic land. And if not, you can say, well, I know that we're on opposite sides of the fence here, and I don't see that as necessarily being a problem for us to rub shoulders together and see each other in public. So, if this is just going to end badly, then, I'd rather not talk about the faith, but you do you, and I'll do me, and we'll nod heads and shake hands, and everything's good. Most witnesses can bring themselves to that, but the more you say, I'm going to disassociate. Again, I appreciate some people have to do that for their own mental sanity, whatever. If you have to do it, I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying for those of you who want to maintain relationships, for those of you who think that it's a joke structure, don't legitimize it. A judicial committee is there's nothing legal about it. There's nothing genuine about it. It's not a fairly held tribunal of any kind. Don't participate in it. Don't legitimize it. Okay. So yeah, I really like that, Buzzkillington. If you have anything to add on that, let me know. Robert Aluba, I agree. Their policy should provide for some sort of notice on your DF, but I think they have to get that from the regional. Probably too busy trying to stop the hemorrhaging of members. Yeah, I would think that probably in your case, Music Man 74, you were probably, kind of public enemy number one in that case. You'd been to Bethel. That's more than just, pioneering, auxiliary pioneering or something. You actually had some clout in the organization. So that's meaningful. Tell me your story if you want to just say a couple of sentences. Music Man 74. I'm interested how you woke up. How the hell did that happen from the heart of Bethel? For heaven's sakes, that's fascinating. Um, and good point, Robert Aluba. AC, I only got as far as being an unbaptized publisher. Never went all the way. Always felt nausea every time I went to the meetings. Was so relieved when I decided to discontinue. Oh my God, I can only imagine. Yeah. So what was the thing that convinced you? Were you made it as far as an unbaptized publisher? What was it that caused that? Was it community, and what caused you to leave? Like, what was it? Intellectual? Did you ever believe in the doctrines? Because that's kind of an interesting story. Uh, Russell Utakati, the Bible says we have the freedom to choose for ourselves which way we want to go, but they are controlling. Yeah, exactly. It's it is a contradiction. Is that really a choice when in the Bible, for instance, you're free moral agents, but you will be wiped out if you don't follow this course. I mean, that's not really freedom, is it? So it's kind of that's just manipulation in my mind. I know that there are theologians who would turn that around and say, yeah, but God is also a God of justice. You know, but I mean, we're talking more institutional now. Anyway, we're not talking about theological philosophy. We're talking here in the nitty gritty with the Jehovah's Witnesses. You can't say you're free moral agents and that you make your own decisions as long as those conclusions are the same as ours, and you'll suffer the weaponization of your social structure if you leave. That clearly is not free moral agency, no matter which way you cut it. Um, Sin City Calm Clout question mark, and then she or he continues. Choices have consequences too. Okay, so you might be on the end. I don't know, just from the sounds of it. And if you are, welcome. Good to have you. Perhaps clout wasn't the right word, but you know what I'm saying. He was in Bethel. He had, there was some his word would have carried a little more meaning than an authority than just your regular publisher who put in 10 hours a month, right? I mean, surely you would agree with that. So you probably take exception to the idea that there's clout in the authority sense. No, there's no real authority in this organization. There's no cult dynamic. But we're just arguing over words there. Choices have consequences too. Yeah, I mean, we all accept that in broader society. Does the organization have that right to wield that over others, to exercise consequences, and weaponize people's social structure? Is that what you're defending? I'm just based on a couple of things that you mentioned here. I don't really know from what angle you're coming from, but I would certainly love to hear more from you. It's always good to have people from either side of this conversation on here. So thanks for stopping by. AC, I didn't want my child to be involved in such a toxic environment, and they kept on pushing for me to bring her. Oh, wow. So I left. Kind of a Katie Holmes reason for leaving Scientology. Yeah, I like that. Well, and I mean, that must have taken some courage to do that, to walk away, and it doesn't sound like you were totally convinced in their doctrines or anything. So that decision, the protection of your child probably trumped a lot of things, and good for you. Lots of parents don't make that choice. It's not so clear cut in some cases, right? But good for you. Sin City livestream.com. Hopefully we got some clarification here. If a person chooses not to live by the Bible, they have consequences. Okay, well, this again, it's good to have you on the channel. Which in particular, what Bible mandates are you speaking of in particular? I'm really curious, and I really enjoy that you've come on here. If you are a Jehovah's Witness, I was gonna don't take this as patronizing. I don't mean it to come across that way, but I commend you for coming on here, because not a lot of people have the balls to do that. They feel that everybody who's speaking publicly, certainly against the witnesses, are apostatizing, and I've never considered myself an apostate. I can't fundamentally, I can't deliberately oppose a deity or his organization if I question the existence of that deity. So that's why I've never really considered myself an apostate. But long story short, I'm glad that you're engaging, and your questions are valuable. Give me some more details here on the Bible mandates that people are choosing not to live by. Is it just the fact that they're questioning the authority of, quote unquote, the governing body? Is that what you're taking exception to? Interesting comment. Thanks for stopping by. So I think I'm caught up on those, and feel free, Sin City Com, to weigh in some more here. I want to, in the meantime, well, actually, we're going to be bringing this to a close fairly soon, because I've been on here for an hour, but there was another question that was sent earlier in the lead up. I got another comment here from Sin City. Suppose someone chooses to follow gay tendencies. The Bible clearly shows the way that person is going. Consequences are also disfellowshipping. So that's an interesting point, and lots of people feel that, this is a debate that is raging not just amongst conservatives and liberals, say. Are you aware that this is a debate that's happening within religions itself, within the Christian faith itself? For example, there are people of the view like yours, and you'll point to 1 Corinthians 6:9, I think it's 6 verse 9, that says that adulterers and greedy persons, and lists a whole bunch of people, men who lie with men, will not be part of God's kingdom. And I can understand why people come to that view that, well, this is pretty explicit condemnation of homosexuality, wouldn't you agree? And then you listen to people on the opposite side of the debate. Again, I don't really accept biblical authority in my life, and we can talk about that, but I don't think that it has any moral authority personally, but assuming that I did, within Christianity, you'll notice even within that same scripture, it says that virtually all of that entire list, it's not just adulterers and greedy persons. It gives a lengthy list that could have encompassed everyone, all sin. And it says very specifically at the end of that scripture that Christ's blood has washed you clean. It's not just homosexuality. And again, I'm not taking a position here. You can feel that the Bible does condemn homosexuality. You have a right to feel that way if you want to feel that way. But there is an alternate side to the conversation where many very devout Christians who feel that they take scriptural authority very seriously, and they say, no, it's all sin that disqualifies us for the kingdom, and it's Jesus' sacrifice that washed us clean. It's not whether you're doing homosexual acts. And besides, there's also another way of interpreting that men who lie with men. There are some biblical scholars who say that you're talking about the act of pederasty and pedophilia, where an older man sleeps with a younger boy. Because there was still injunctions against pedophilia even back then, although the age was much younger. So there's a great deal of conflict here. It's not just that. I don't think being a Christian necessarily commits one to feel that homosexuality is in and of itself against what God teaches, and certainly isn't under the ambit that Jesus' ransom sacrifice covers. So, again, I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm just saying, if you look at the other side of the argument, even within Christianity, there's a great deal of argument to make here. I'm going to come back here because he probably responded. Cincinnati.com, suppose someone chooses to follow. Oh, yeah, so I said that. No debate, scripture is clear. Well, I mean, again, you can feel that way, and if that gives you direction in life, good for you. But there is a debate, because if you look in Christianity, that debate is clearly being waged. It's not just that I'm saying it. Go on YouTube. You're going to find Bible scholars, and you're going to find theologians on either side of that debate. Pope Francis, for example, he still holds, I would assume, that in fact, I did a video on this a few months ago. He still holds that homosexuality is morally disordered, but he feels that there should be legal provision within the church, within the Vatican, for those who choose to follow that lifestyle, and that God is ultimately the one who judges. I mean, that is what the Psalms make clear. That's his position, that it's God who judges, not man. And again, I'm not taking a position. I'm neutral with respect to what the scriptures say explicitly. The fact that there is so much debate on it kind of causes me to not take it as a serious moral authority in my life. But to say there's no debate, surely you must realize that the debate is alive and well on YouTube. Look it up. But it's a good point. You are coming from a position that you feel the Bible is clear, and you're just trying to do what the Bible says. So, I do accept where you're coming from. I do. No debate. Buzzkillington, weaponize your social structure. Yes, I agree. That's exactly what DFing does. Sin City, 1 Corinthians 5, 9-11. Yeah, I think that's the one that I was referring to, right? About, okay, and then you said, those who have repented are washed clean. Those who've stopped living the life. As it says, clearly in the scripture, it says that Jesus' blood has washed you clean. No sinner will make it into God's kingdom without taking advantage of the ransom provision. And who are we to judge whether someone repented or not? God judges. God is the one that judges. Again, I'm not saying that I have a stake in this debate. I'm not a Christian. I don't accept biblical authority. But I think you should acknowledge that the debate is alive and well, and that there are intelligent people on either side of that conversation, and the answer is not so clear when you dig into the scriptural wording, and when you dig into the idea of the ransom sacrifice and what it does. So, okay. That's wrong also. Okay, be more specific. This is interesting, by the way. I do enjoy this, and I'm not out to convince you of anything. You have perfect control over your conclusions, but I just think that you need to acknowledge that this is a debate that exists within the organization, or sorry, not within the organization, within the institution of Christianity. You can say that statistically Christianity seems to point people towards being against sexual diversity, gender diversity, and so on and so forth. But to say that Christianity commits you to it as an absolute statement, to disprove that, all I would need to find is a theologian who feels differently. You know what I mean? So, stored living their life with a view to sin, they stop practicing sin. Who stops practicing sin? That's an interesting point. Who has stopped practicing sin? Have we? So those who've repented of past sins, the greedy person, he has stopped being greedy altogether. No, he's still, the person on the other side of that debate will still say it's Jesus. He still relies on Jesus' ransom sacrifice. It's not just repentance that that gets you off free, because you are bound to repeat those mistakes, quote unquote mistakes. And we, again, the biblical language is not perfectly clear that homosexuality is a sin in God's eyes. Again, I'm not taking a position on that. But do you see my point? Great questions. I do love this, by the way. Elders judge inside the congregation. God judges those outside of the congregation. Clear scripture. So, okay. So, what about people? Do we not all have an accounting towards God and Armageddon? I mean, isn't that what the scriptures preach? The Bible doesn't say elder at all, not once, saying that elders judge in any absolute sense. We come before God for judgment. Now, I can understand where you're coming from, that there needs to be some kind of, if the Bible is true, which again, I dismiss that, but if the Bible is true, and we're going to have something like a community, there's going to have to be a captain in command of the boat. I do get that. I can understand where you're coming from on that. If there's supposed to be a church that represents him, which again, there's debate on that, who is going to take that lead, and who is going to find their authority in that? I do appreciate that if we are going to have an organized structure, some kind of institution, yes, there's going to be some leadership, and that will place certain individuals in a capacity of judgment. But again, there is debate even on that. There's not one place to land that's truly solid that hasn't been debated seriously, where you can make a good case for a counterexample. Where are we here? I do want to allow some other people to weigh in here. It doesn't have to be with this particular talk of homosexuality. Robert Aluba, quoting from a book which most people grant no authority to, will not convince anyone. If all scripture is inspired of God, why was the Bible you use abridged after Paul wrote that? So you seem to be responding to Sin City Com. 1 Corinthians 6:11, this is again Sin City Com. And yet that is what some of you were. But you have been washed clean, but you have been sanctified, but you have been declared righteous in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Okay, so you were greedy. You were adulterers. Does that mean that people can't still find redemption after they've committed such and such? And you'll find there's a whole list of people there that encompasses virtually everyone. How can I adjudicate someone is greedy? There are many people within the Jehovah's Witness organization who, they're doing everything quote unquote right, but they might have a very greedy heart. How can I read that? How do I know? Ultimately, it comes before God in the final analysis, and those people, again, I kind of have to give credence to what other theologians are saying, that not credence in the sense that I'm saying they're absolutely right. I'm just saying I get where they're coming from, that yeah, you're still going to have to take part in Jesus' ransom sacrifice. You're still going to have to avail yourself of that, whether you've stopped smoking, or whether you've stopped going to casinos, or whether you've stopped whatever particular injunction of organized religion is trying to place on somebody. You know what I mean? Great question, though. Sin City, again, I don't want to sound patronizing, but you have to appreciate, from my perspective, not a lot of witnesses come in on these things, so it takes a lot of fortitude to come on and to speak your mind, and I applaud the hell out of that. Like, it's good having you, and this is healthy to have you here, so thanks. And again, please don't take that as patronizing. I don't mean it that way. I'm really happy to have you here. I'm going to engage some other comments here, though, okay? So don't feel that I'm sidestepping anything. I feel that I've made the point that there is another serious position I think that's worth considering. You're free to make whatever decision you want. It's up to you. But thanks for being here. Moving on to Robert Aluba. Even accomplished sinners like me still have to practice. I would hate for my skills to wane. Well, cheers to that. Russell Utakaki. But how can you help someone when you shun instead of loving and helping that person? Yeah, I mean, that's a good point too. Maybe Sin City, think about that too. That's a good point. Robert Aluba again. If the private club has rules for membership, cool. But holding family ties hostage is a control tactic and a violation of the UN Human Rights Charter. Before the UN is dismissed, the Watchtower was a member. Yeah, that's true. Actually, maybe we can stop. Maybe we can kind of go away from homosexuality and not so much. I'm not so much responding to Sin City here. But you know, that is a good point about human rights. The UN Charter. There's a lot of things in there, you know, and the UN in recent years, I know this based on the fact that I just read a book by the former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who talks about how they've had to revise their posture towards, you know, gender parity within the organization, towards sexually and gender diverse individuals, even towards certain nationalities that I wouldn't say there was an overt racism in the structure itself. That hasn't existed in a while at the UN, but when it comes to, for example, treating indigenous folks and reconciling their history and dealings within sovereign nations like Canada, for example, and Australia, you know, the UN has really had to revise some things, even though their charter was explicit, you know, on who has human rights and what does it mean to have a community that you know, that someone has a right to community. You know, it's something very interesting. Speaking in the context of Canada, is, you know, Canada espouses in all branches of its government the ideals of the UN Charter, and yet there are moments, and this indicts the witnesses, where they will say, yes, you have a right to your community, and the Jehovah's Witnesses get in the way of that, but there's a point where we can't involve ourselves. And so these you bring up a great point about the UN, that like there's this friction is not just something that exists in Christianity. It's something that interpreting values is a very difficult thing to do in any community. It's, you know, Christianity doesn't own the franchise on that. This is such a great conversation, guys. I really like all the stuff you're saying. Sin City, oh wait, maybe I should back up here. For what I have to do with judging those outside, do you not judge those inside? While God judges those outside, remove the wicked man from among yourselves. More from Sin City. Since you don't hold the Bible as an authority, why take a stand against those who accept it and teach it? I don't really want to get into more. I do want to engage other comments here, but I'll just say here, Sin City, that I don't. In what way am I taking a stand against anybody? I'm simply leveling a different viewpoint. You know, witnesses have been at the forefront of fighting for free speech, and I respect the hell out of that. I respect the hell out of the fact that you've come onto here to express your opinion and to engage in dialogue. That is how we reconcile lots of the things that have happened between our two communities. So in your showing up here, you espouse that ideal. You espouse the fact that you know, you express your opinions by virtue of the fact that you extend that to others, right? So I don't see in what way I've been of a particular menace to the society. I don't call for them to be banned. I don't, you know, they have a view, a serious point of view like everybody else. Um, so in what way do you feel that I'm attacking? I'm just curious. Interesting comment, and thanks for all this, by the way. Moving on to Tony Toddy. Haven't seen you before. It's great having you. Are Jehovah's Witnesses proud of their history from the time of Charles Taze Russell to the present day? Well, I think you'll have different answers towards that one. That's a good question. The UN, God's kingdom on earth question. That's in quotations. This is from Sin City. I'm not exactly sure what you're saying there, Sin City, but maybe add to that if you like. Robert Aluba, Tony Toddy. If they were aware of it, we wouldn't be here. Let me go back to what he was saying. Yeah, if they were aware of the history, who knows, eh? Well, the thing is, it's interesting when you talk to Jehovah's Witnesses and you ask what they think about their history. You'll get people on kind of all sides of that one. You know, I've said before, the Jehovah's Witness community is as diverse as any other community. That's what I find so interesting. You can ask, what do you feel about the fact that we have it on fairly good authority that Rutherford was a womanizer, you know, and that he didn't follow the will. There's a big kerfuffle there with the will of Charles Taze Russell and what became of the International Bible Students. And you'll ask a Jehovah's Witness who's actually up on this stuff and say, like, what do you feel about that? And you'll have people on either side of that question. They'll say, well, you know, his heart was mostly in the right place and he's still being used by God. Others will say, you know, we've come a long way since then. You know, this was just the starting of an organization. You know, I don't follow men. You know, they might take that position, that a little more of a democratic position. That's probably my favorite, that when witnesses do that and they say, you know, I'm not following any man, they just seem to be closest to the truth from what I've seen. Hey, you know, like that's a respectable point of view too. But it's a good question, you know, to ask people, what do you think of your history as a Jehovah's Witness, you know, and just see, has it been as resplendent as certainly they've made out, you know, the leadership has made out, and is it as resplendent as I forgot what my next point was there. Basically, as you would want to believe, you know what I mean? Moving on. I like this, Sin City Calm. We obey God as ruler rather than men. Like, good point. And if there's any point of agreement and commendation, again, I don't want to sound patronizing. I'm not trying to sound patronizing. If you're of that latter group who says that I don't follow the men, I just feel that this governing body is closest to the truth. I disagree about certain things, but more or less I will submit to their authority in most things unless they ask me to be, you know, to do something really evil. I say, you know, you're going to find that outside of the organization as well. I applaud people like that who have, I would say that's a more democratic view towards the governing body, and I say more power to you, you know. I've been a strong advocate, I've said this in the past, for people, if they feel they can't leave the organization, be a force of good within it. And you certainly sound like that, you know, by saying things, we obey God as ruler rather than men. So if you do take your ultimate authority from God and not the governing body, I will never make an enemy out of you, trust me. I can commend the hell out of that. No confusion when morality is based on God's word. We could debate that, but that's, you know, we've been through that. You know where I sit there. AC, he's not really taking a stance. He is promoting freedom, duh. Thanks, AC. Sin City Com. When standards are based on God's word. Sin City, yes. I'm not getting too many details there. Robert Aluba. Everything sounds like persecution when you are constantly subjected to black and white thinking. Russell Utakaki. I hope I'm saying your last name right. Correct me in the comments if I'm not. It's great having you. The Bible was inspired by God. Why change it? Yeah, that's kind of. I like what Aluba said. You know, it kind of gets back to. It was just speaking about black and white thinking. It kind of gets back to how Pilate. Remember, one of the most profound questions asked: "What is truth?" You know, I'm not of the view that truth doesn't exist. That truth definitely exists, and truth is kind of despotic in its nature, isn't it? At least when you first look at it. It peremptorily rejects certain claims and espouses other claims. Or at least, again, in the initial view of truth, that's what it seems to do. But when you look at it close enough, and I think this might have been what Pilate was getting at, although I'm no Bible scholar, is truth is provisional. It depends on which side of the argument you're coming from. Now, of course, you can write Pilate off as evil. I'm not promoting him as some amazing thinker here. But just the question of truth and right and wrong thinking, Manichaean black and whiteism. You know, there's another way of looking at truth that I think is certainly more healthy and accurate. And that is not that truth doesn't exist, as, you know, postmodernists are purported to believe, but to take the view that truth is a contextual discipline. Something can be true and false simultaneously depending on your point of perspective, depending on your angle. You know, the water is hot. Well, hot in relation to what? Hot in relation to my central nervous system? It's 150 degrees, you know, and I'm going to get blistered. Yeah, that's hot, you know, objectively hot from a human position, from a human standpoint. You know, it's frigid cold compared to the sun. That's just a basic example, right, of how truth works. The water is hot is both true and false depending on your perspective. Okay, I read that. Robert Aluba, if God actually spoke to me with discernible instructions, I might obey him too. Well, yeah, be careful of that though. I've had some voices talk to me and in my head. I'm just kidding. Voices in my head. Don't follow all the voices in your head. No. And we got another one. Monica Lang-Gimir Scarning. It's good to have you. She didn't really leave much of a comment, just a stop thing. I don't know, maybe this conversation is getting a little much with this back and forth with Sin City, which I'm enjoying. But anyway, Monica, it's nice having you. I'm glad that you popped by. Man, look at that. We're sitting at 13 consecutive viewers, concurrent viewers, I mean. I wonder, you know what? I'm going to stay on for 5 more minutes and see if anything else shows up in the chat. Otherwise, I've had such a great time with you guys. This is so much fun. Sin City Com, come back, my friend. Come back. You're always welcome here. We have disagreements. You know, we have a different perspective, but on the whole, even though I disagree with you on certain things, first of all, I know where you're coming from, and secondly, I respect that you are engaging in the dialogue. You know, I don't like it when a Jehovah's Witness weighs in on another channel and then the owner of that channel says, you're not even supposed to be on here anyways. It's like, maybe, his intentions, maybe he disagrees with that mandate from the society that you shouldn't be on these platforms. you know, I mean, as I've said in the past with Daryl Wildberg, he's got a platform, and he is like the only witness out there who is talking. And yeah, we have profound differences, but I respect the hell out of the man for being on YouTube. Like, you work for Jesus, and that's the one thing we agree on, is that he says he works for Jesus. He doesn't work for the governing body. More power to you. I don't want to talk to people who are just, you know, androids working for the governing body. I want to talk to people, you know. And so Sin City, again, I don't want to sound patronizing. It's just appreciate that I'm enthusiastic that somebody from the other side is coming here and is talking to us. You know, you can walk away with all the views that you came in with. I'm totally fine with that. It's just great to have you, and make sure you come again, because this has been fun, and it's well, I've made my point. You see where I'm going with this. I've not gotten any more chats here, so perhaps I should leave before my welcome is outstayed. And thanks a lot for your super chats, guys. That was very kind of you. We had so much engagement. Come back. If you have more questions for me, if anything, just let me know next time in the lead up for my next live stream. I always advertise that well in advance. Leave questions in there for next time. Okay, we got one more comment. Derek, what do you think about the dating of the destruction of Babylon and the following line of reasoning for authority by the governing body? So, oh, and AC, thank you. No, thank you for being here, AC. It's good having you. Robert Luba, so I think I am going to close things down, but I'll just answer that very briefly as best I can. I do find it fascinating that Jehovah's Witnesses are the only ones saying that Babylon was destroyed in 537 BCE, and saying that the Jews were taken into exile in 607 BCE. You know, people who don't even believe in the Bible, archaeologists and people on all sides of the religion debate, you know, believing in the Bible, all of that, there is more or less a consensus, a pretty darn strong consensus, that it did not happen in 537 BCE. And the whole 1914 doctrine lands on that. You know, it depends on that, you know, along with those other scriptures in Revelation for which they get I'm not fresh on it, you know, a day for a year and all that. I know how to do math, and I know that it only adds up to 1914 if you change the starting date. So that's going to be my terse answer. That was good. Thanks, Robert Aluba, and thanks to everybody. I really am going to say goodbye now. Nice to see you. Take care, guys. See you next time. Sin City, come back. Come back on the next one, okay? Bye.